The password stuff, though, I think kind of needs to die. I was thinking about this just the other day. There's so many other ways that you can authenticate nowadays.
Welcome to the Hashtime Show, your weekly review of cybersecurity news and info. This is episode number 1. On today's show, Dave, Chris, and Jeff discuss new packet compression techniques and why passwords must die. Check us out online at hashtimeshow.com. And now, onto the show.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris Vincent. I'm here today with Jeff Marshall and David Norlin, and this is going to be the first episode, so bear with us as we figure things out and get through the process. I want to kick off the show today with our first segment, Getting to Know You, and I'll start with the man on my left, Jeff. Jeff, tell us who you are.
Hey, this is Jeff Marshall. I'm the Chief Information and Security Officer for DataShield. I've been with the company for about 3 years, handling security operations, threat intelligence, engineering, and development. Prior to that, I was at Koch Industries handling security architecture, including policies, procedures, security operations, risk management around enterprise architecture, acquisitions, divestitures. And prior to that, I have been doing security and IT for quite a while.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Dave, can you tell us about you a little bit?
Hi, I'm David Norlin. I am the Director of Security Operations here at DataShield. I've been with the company about 3 years, and prior to that, I worked for the Army as a contractor, working incident response for the entire continental U.S. for all Army installations that fell under that command. And then prior to that, I was in the Air Force, and I got my security introduction through kind of an alternate means. I started doing vulnerability management as a sysadmin, and then I found out that I had a little bit of aptitude for doing that, and unfortunately so did everybody else, because that's where I got stuck permanently. And then so I found my way out of that and into a more strict security role, and have kind of stayed with that throughout my career, and enjoying it, and hope to do so for a long time to come.
And my name's Chris Vincent. I'm the host of the show. I'm not the host because I'm the most technical. I'm the host because I'm the marketing guy. So before I worked here, I just started here at DataShield. We're here in April 2019. Spent 10 years running a marketing firm, doing consulting, grassroots guerrilla marketing, all that kind of fun stuff. Now learning the security industry. And I'll tell you what, it is fascinating so far. I mean that kind of facetiously. It's dry. I'm trying to get my feet wet.
You don't have to lie to us, Chris.
You don't have to lie. Yeah, I won't. It's one of those things that you have to figure out how to digest. It's a big elephant.
If it helps, we feel the same way about marketing.
About marketing, yeah, exactly. So this is our new show, guys, and we're our goal here is, as the format changes, we will see how things go. But we're gonna do our best to be topical and discuss cybersecurity and tech and InfoSec information for the week. We're gonna jump into news. Might give you guys some tips. I got some questions, like for example, where I should store my passwords. I heard that putting a sticky note on my Windows desktop was not the place to do that.
Yep. Yeah, that's not a good place, nor is your Outlook contacts and under your keyboard. Those are all bad.
All bad places.
You just want to put it either like beneath a drawer, under the desk somewhere. That's probably the best.
It's not PCI compliant, I'm guessing. Definitely not HIPAA.
Don't take that advice. Don't listen to us.
So we'll get into what we're getting into. Today we're going to talk about news of the week, if you will. Today is April 24th, 2019, and we're going to chat about what's been going on recently. We wanted to kick things off. So in the news recently, a few weeks ago, Army researchers want to identify how to compress network traffic as much as possible without losing the ability to detect and investigate malicious activity. So to read the quote, this is a mouthful. Researchers at the U.S. Army Combat Capabilities Development Command Army Research Laboratory, in short, ARL, and them and Townsend University have identified a way to improve network security. So, guys, I want to get your take on this. Jeff, I guess I'll start with you.
Yes, that is too long of an acronym.
It's too long of an acronym.
You did a great job. That's fantastic.
It's hard to read. So, what I'm understanding from this is that the bandwidth required to get full down to the packet level is just too intensive when you're outsourcing it right to a SOC. So the goal with this is to sort of only transmit data until you maybe detect a breach and then stop. Is that what's going on here? Explain this to me.
Yeah, I think the general gist is there's a lot of data when it comes to security, right? This is, target breach, other breaches, what happens. You get fatigue. There's just so much information. And so them as an Army, especially trying to bring all the security data from all their installations back to a central console where they can have analysts look at that data requires a huge amount of bandwidth and probably space, depending on what level of data, whether it's full packet capture, logs, etc. So they're looking at ways to minimize what they have to store and what they have to transmit for an analyst to make a decision.
Okay. David, I didn't know you. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't know you worked in the military. Did you work in a soccer in the military?
Yeah, so I was just part of a base communication squadron at first, and I was doing kind of the typical sysadmin tasks, and then I got veered off into security, having to chase out-of-date machines into dark hangars and in Tucson heat. So it was kind of an abrupt entry into security. It was not comfortable by any means, but eventually we got a golf cart and that helped. So
You're in Tucson?
And I was in Tucson, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. So.
Do you refer to Tucson as the armpit of Arizona like the rest of us Phoenicians do?
No, Tucson is it's becoming like San Fran, but not by the beach.
No beach.
There's many homeless people out in the streets?
I'm not going to take a stance on the homeless.
Okay. That's San Fran and Portland thing. Yeah.
No, I mean, unfortunately, there were a few disaffected individuals, but yeah.
This has been the hot Arizona talk here on the podcast.
Yeah.
Very geotopical.
Slice of Arizona. But yeah, so and then after that, I worked for the Army as a security analyst. So I did incident response and incident triage, investigation, the whole gamut. We had a ton of tools available to us and tons of data. So it was a really good learning experience for me to kind of formalize some of my training after the hodgepodge I had out of operational necessity in the Air Force. They kind of just told you whatever you needed to know. And then I went to the Army and learned it in a more organized, structured format.
So when you read this, like having the military background and security, like do you think this is something they're just trying to implement from like a military standpoint, or does this have applications commercially?
Yeah, I mean, they were in the middle of a big restructure when I left that environment. I think this is maybe part of it, but I've been out of that sphere for a while. I think the most interesting thing to me is some of the technical aspects. They're talking about lossless compression, and that means that you don't lose anything. So if you've ever compressed a JPEG or something into a JPEG, you do lose color data inside that image. But there are formats where it will make the file smaller, but you won't actually lose any of the data. So you could zoom into the smallest point and it would still look the same as the original file. So the point being here is when they say lossless, I'm interested in how they're doing that, because they're maybe truncating parts of it or taking out empty space in some of the headers. And when you do that, compression is a computationally intensive sort of thing. So I'm guessing they have some kind of inline device that is compressing it and then decompressing it when it gets to the destinations.
Yeah, they mentioned something in there too about, not sending all of the data because the attacks are at the beginning of data, right? So which is true, but other things happen later on. So I think what they're really trying to do is saying, hey, what's the minimal amount of information? Then how do we shrink that and get it there quickly is the gist of it. I mean, there's lots of technologies out there that do that kind of thing. We use that in some areas. Uber, Kafka and some other tools can take data, compress it, send it off. The truncating of it may be a little bit different, but there's lots of methods to do this. Commercial applications, I guess there could be some use for it, but it would have to be in very large installations and companies where they have maybe multiple subdivisions but their main corporation handles all the security operations.
Got it. So the SOCs may be at one site and they have a ton of different facilities, like a multinational corporation.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know what they're taking out of the packets or what they deem not useful or what they're chopping from it, because if you're looking at an encrypted packet, then there's going to be a gigantic chunk of that is not useful. There's only some parts of the transaction that might actually be worthy of investigation. But if they're doing like just raw data and capturing regular unencrypted data as well, I mean, there's potentially interesting things in there that you wouldn't want to chop.
Yeah. Exactly.
Nice. Okay. Well, that kind of puts a top on that one, I guess. That definitely helps me understand a little bit more, because when I look at this, I'm thinking about it from like a very top level standpoint. I'm like, oh, this, everyone can use this, but really, what you're saying is no, this is kind of specialized.
Yeah, I mean, would it help individuals? Yeah, I mean, there's lots of installations out there that have low bandwidth. Maybe they're, hey, we've got a scattered network and we've got a lot of rural area stuff or things. There's definitely areas where it could be valid, but the average consumer of, say, firewalls and IDS equipment, I don't know that there's a whole lot of value there for them.
They don't dive into the technical side of this too much, but they do say that it's less than 10% of the original traffic volume while losing no more than 1% of cybersecurity threats. So I personally have never heard of a lossless compression technique for anything that got it down to less than 10% of the source. So I would really love to know how they're doing that. So.
Well, too bad we can't call them, right?
Yeah, just pick up the phone.
I'll get the colonel on the phone. All right, so next topic, we kind of covered that one. Next topic. A recent study by the UK's National Cybersecurity Centre, the NCSC, where everything has got an acronym, that looked at public databases of breached accounts confirms that for many people, simple passwords are still a thing, with 23.2 million accounts globally using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was the most common password on the list. And then after that was like 1 through 9 and 1111 and then QWERTY and then the bottom row of the keyboard. So these are all some of the most popular passwords still, which is humorous to me. I mean, I wanted to ask you guys about this. This is one of the common issues you guys run into with like some of these mid-market and smaller businesses. Is that where a lot of breaches are happening? Is it brute force password hacking like this?
I mean, not to veer off the discussion into a different direction, but
please do veer us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that your passwords are always going to be a weakness, but so many stuff comes in through the application layer or phishing. I mean, yeah, passwords are an important aspect of that, but it's possibly not as big an issue as some other things.
I would say not just mid-market. I mean, and there's enterprise organizations that don't have good IAM strategies and tools out there, and they have poor hygiene as well. It's just kind of I don't think everybody has the brain power to remember 4 million passwords. So sometimes people shortcut it and, especially uneducated or unknowledgeable about security practices. Security awareness is critical in as we go forward, not just in enterprises, but, we have to start doing it in school and training people on true hygiene and how to know what not to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think passwords can still definitely be a vector for attack, but there's so many organizations I think are getting smarter and starting to implement two-factor. I think where the passwords really come into play are those systems that were stood up 4 or 5 years ago that everyone's forgotten about. They're still somehow online, and then that's the thing that gets attacked. And if you have a weak password on that machine, then maybe you're in trouble.
This is like a Yahoo breach kind of thing, someone's old Yahoo email kind of deal.
It could be a lot of those too. You know, if you go look at a lot of these breaches, I mean, they're fairly old breaches that these passwords are out there. And, there's a lot of test systems and things that people leave up that have, having good hygiene of ensuring you're shutting down old systems or changing passwords. In the past, a lot of that didn't happen. So I think people are getting better at that, but it's still there.
Well, it's sort of like, everybody knows when they leave the house to close the garage and to lock your front door, right? I guess unless you're in Park City, Utah, that's the one place I went where they didn't have fences. So that's the utopia, right? But in the rest of the world, at least here in Phoenix, you lock your door when you leave your house, right? And is that kind of what the password is metaphorically for a society? We have to make sure you lock the door. You can't leave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as your code.
I mean, if anything, there's access management tools out there that can help you control stuff like that. I mean, you can know when certain accounts are being accessed, when certain credentials are being used.
There's plenty of password management tools out there, even for personal use and things that make it easy for people to keep track of different passwords for everything. Yeah. It's just a practice. And again, I think we've got to start educating people younger and sooner to ensure that they're no longer following those bad practices.
Is that the message like for a CISO or a CTO at a company that's kind of starting to implement some of these things, is two-factor and some of the systems, the thing to implement for them?
I mean, I think two-factor's been around for a while, and it's kind of a standard if you're not doing two-factor. Granted, there's a lot of stuff out there that we need to come up with new and better ways to do this because, if you've seen recently, the Samsung smartphone, they 3D printed a fingerprint and they can get into it.
Use chewing gum or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
chewing gum. There's different methods.
That's some Mission Impossible stuff.
Exactly. But it's no longer impossible.
Yeah.
Where's Tom Cruise at with that face mold thing?
Exactly.
Yeah, the password stuff though, I think kind of needs to die. I was thinking about this just the other day. There's so many other ways that you can authenticate nowadays, like for
blood drops or.
Oh, you could do that. Yeah,
it's going to be the quote of the show. Dave Norlin says the password needs to die.
Needs to die. Yeah. No, for like your Google account. I have two-factor set up on that. It goes directly to my phone. I authenticate with my fingerprint.
Yep.
I think there's got to be ways for that to become more accepted and deployed.
If we don't start coming up with better ideas and killing the password, you're going to keep seeing these generic passwords. You can't stop people from being lazy.
Right. So let me ask about it for a second. So the retinal display, like the Mac kind of thing, right? Does that? Let's just say we're in a world where, you're at a company and all your employees, they have to actually look at their computer for it to work, right? What does that do for the hackers out there that are remote in other countries trying to hack in? Does that make it significantly more difficult? Or does it matter that much? Because you were saying they're coming in through phishing or other mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, the weakest link is always the user. So if that person's logged on when they get attacked and the attack can run under whatever permissions or credentials they're using, then there are shortcuts around these biometric methods. But anything to add in one extra step, one extra hurdle for an attacker to get over, I think is a positive step.
Okay. Cool. All right, next topic, kind of leaning into this. This one was kind of interesting. I wanted to get your guys' take on this. So they didn't even list the name in the article. It was a popular hotspot finder app for Android, exposed the Wi-Fi network passwords for more than 2 million networks. The app, downloaded by thousands of users, allowed anyone to search the Wi-Fi networks in their nearby area, and allowed them, the user, to upload their own Wi-Fi network passwords from their devices to the database so other people could use it. So does this mean that people were, hey, I'm in an apartment complex and I'm uploading my password to my device so other people can get free Wi-Fi? Is that what that was saying?
Yeah.
No,
100%.
I think really it's around, well, first off, you can't just download apps. Like I try to tell my daughter this all the time. Stop just downloading every app in the App Store.
But Dad, it's free.
And putting information in there, right? You got to know where it's. In this case, I forget the name of the application as well, but it was by a developer in China. There wasn't a whole lot of information out there. People were just putting stuff in there, and it was uploading all the stuff. I mean, that happens more than people understand or know, whether it be on purpose or on accident. Developer puts something in there, forgets to take it out, it's uploading information. Trying to make sure you're using apps from reputable sources is important in this scenario. So I think people are putting in their Wi-Fi passwords or as they said, keeping a catalog of free Wi-Fi out there. Really bad idea.
You reminded me, my son said, hey, Dad, there's a way I can get free V-Bucks, from Fortnite if I log in. And I'm like, I don't think so, buddy. I'm pretty sure that's not free. I'm pretty sure they're going to steal your account. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, too. So that makes me think. So phishing, right, it's happening to Cheryl in HR and Chris in marketing. And some people maybe aren't as technically savvy on this stuff. But like you were saying earlier about educating kids, right? That's an easy spot for kids because kids are connected now, right? I didn't have access to online accounts. I mean, my kid has a Facebook and a YouTube page for logging into stuff, and he has access. And phishing's a lot easier because he's 9. Yep. So I don't know. It's probably not going to affect mid-market as much, but it's kind of an overall society thing.
Well,
right?
I mean, you say that, but I've heard of instances not too long ago. I won't say who, but circumstances in which a person with a business device, like a cell phone that they use for work, they leave it out. Their kid gets a hold of it, downloads an app, and then before you know it, they're doing some kind of crazy thing on this person's business device with business information on it. And is probably doing something it was never intended to do. So, I mean, there are ways that this can still bite you.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at kids, especially, my daughter's high school friends. I mean, they're in everything. They're in Instagram, Snapchat, everything but Facebook, because apparently Facebook's for old guys now.
It's for grandparents.
Yeah,
it's for us.
That's what I'm told.
Grandpas.
But, they're so connected. My daughter has a friend who thinks it's great to just click every link that comes in a fake text message to them. They just don't understand the repercussions to doing so.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't this one of the original premises of Windows 10 is that you could share automatically your Wi-Fi with friends that you had identified? Am I just imagining that?
I recall something. You could do that with, so iCloud does that too, right?
Yeah.
It stores your Wi-Fi password,
Right.
and then any device you log into that iCloud account, it just auto connects to your Wi-Fi, right? So
Really?
Yeah. My kid will do things on the iPad, and all of a sudden I've got like accounts saved on my on my MacBook, and I'm like, what the heck are you doing, kid?
Yeah. And this Wi-Fi thing is ridiculous. There's so many Wi-Fi enabled thermostats on our block of the street that I'd be surprised if you didn't have 2 million network passwords or network SSIDs just driving down or through Phoenix. The Wi-Fi pollution these days is ridiculous.
Yeah, actually, I saw an article recently about that. Gary Hayslip, the CISO of WebRoot, had posted something about a real a tinker or tech guy has all these connected things, but a real security guy has none of them in his house. It's like the risk of having these things is so great. My wife the other day was arguing with me of putting a digital keypad on my front door, and I refused just because I know what I can do to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of funny though. So I agree with you guys. It's like you're putting yourself at risk, but I guess it's a slippery slope, right? My thought is, who cares? They can hack in. What are they going to see? But if everyone has that posture, especially if you're within an organization where they may care, right? We have to kind of change our posture a little bit. A little bit. We're not living in Park City, Utah, or we're not living. We have to have fences up, digital fences up around what we're doing to make sure that we're keeping the bad guys out.
Yep.
Cool. We got time for one more?
I think we do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. This is near and dear to my heart. I just found out bodybuilding.com was breached, and they disclosed it on their website. There's a lot to read here. I'll just give you the highlights on it. Basically, they identified a breach in February, and then they kind of released it. That someone had accessed the data, but they weren't sure what was compromised. They're saying no credit cards. And I kind of wanted to get your guys' feedback. I don't know if you've ever been to the bodybuilding.com forums, but I'm not surprised that they've been breached because there's some crazy stuff going on.
As you can see from my dad bod, I go to these forums all the time.
It was what was the joke? The breach was really bad, or it was full?
The breach is way bad.
The breach is way bad. Oh, that's right. That's right. Whey protein bad. Would you guys have any insight on this? Is this company? So this is the first time that I've really, I guess maybe my awareness is low. I've seen a company saying, "Hey, we were breached." Is this a PCI thing? They have to put it out there.
In some cases, people are required to announce a breach. I think we've talked a lot about this recently, David and I, about the right and the wrong way to go about getting breached, right? Because scare tactics aside, it happens, right? And you can have the best hygiene in the world, but again, end users are still the weak point. So, looking back at this one, they claim that they think it happened in July of 2018, I think is the thing I saw. And they found it and released it in April, that they think they found it in February. It is a little unclear, but
sure.
I think it's really going about the right thing. Disclosing what happened, how it happened, and what you're doing to resolve it is really the way forward, and making sure you're clear about, what you found and how long it took you to find it and why. People want to know.
Yeah, breaches are kind of a pivotal moment, I think, for a lot of companies, because you're at that decision point where if you keep it to yourself, maybe you allow things to continue normally, at least from the outside, or if you disclose it, then there's a lot of doubt and potential fallout in public opinion. But I think more and more society on the whole is kind of looking favorably on disclosure. Look at the most recent breach with Norsk Hydro, the Norwegian aluminum producer, they came out very quickly, as soon as they were able to, and said, we got hit and this is what happened. And I think that kind of boosted the opinion of that company for a lot of people versus just keeping it to themselves.
Like the Experian breach, right?
Yeah. So
this is they did a solid for their customers. What you're saying, like from a security professional standpoint, this is bearing all and saying, hey, we got breached. We don't think you were affected, but you might have been. Hey, I think their practices was to send out notification to their customers saying, hey, reset your password, and then they set a deadline of like June to reset it by. So that's kind of the good practice if you get breached. I mean,
exactly.
With these e-commerce sites too, I mean, my guess is the goal is to either skim data or for people to get credit card information, right? And so that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, health data is just as important to a lot of these guys as credit card information. Credit card has a quicker financial, but there's a lot of health data on the black market to purchase as well.
Interesting, right? I guess speaking of the forums, there's a lot of health discussions. I say that in air quotes in the bodybuilding.com forum. Yeah. So I guess that does have a piece of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's also other ways you could make use of this data. There's plenty of military people that are going to find themselves talking about various things on there that might identify them as military. That information falls into, less than proper hands. They could then use that information to identify more about that person and target them for, human to human exploitation. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that you can take seemingly innocuous data and have that be pivotal in how you go about your nefarious deeds. So
interesting. Social engineering at its best.
Yeah, especially if you have insider information. Like, it seems silly, but things like you would post on a bodybuilding site, like your workout routine, your certain features about your body. I mean, people put dimensions and that kind of thing on there of their gains and losses, whatever the case may be. That's very personal information. And imagine meeting someone that kind of had an in with you, and then you get to know more about them, and they seem to know you really well. I mean, people open up under all kinds of circumstances, and that kind of familiarity could be a vulnerability. So.
Interesting. Yeah, we probably should explore that in a later episode, but for now, that's all the time we have. Stay tuned. This is our weekly scheduled podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to the Hashtime Show. Check us out online at hashtimeshow.com.